Hey guys, Will Mahan here with you once again for Saberun Design Tutorial Blog, and we make game. In a previous tutorial we had done, we used smart objects to help us complete that project, but because we were on a schedule we didn't go into a lot of detail explaining just exactly what all a smart object can do. Well, this tutorial is all about smart objects, and we're going to discuss just one more capability that this powerful tool has. Now what we've got here is some basic font on top of a basic background, and right now it's looking pretty bland. The font doesn't even really pop out from the background all that well. What's one of the most standard ways to bring font out from a background? Well, that's simply to apply a stroke. So let's go ahead and do that now. Double click the layer to bring up the layer style window and choose stroke. Change the color to white, click OK, and click OK. Now that's already made a big difference. The font pops up much better now. But just for fun, what if we wanted to put a black stroke on the outside of our white stroke? Well, that's kind of a problem because you can't put the same layer style on top of the layer twice. Or can you? Well, actually, yeah, you can. There are ways to do it. Now the first way is by collapsing that layer style so that it becomes part of the original pixels. And we can do that by creating a new layer. Hold down Control as you click the new layer icon, and then activate the top layer, and then hit Control plus E to collapse that layer. And as you can see, the layer has now been flattened and the stroke is part of the pixels. Now as you can see, that layer has now been flattened and the stroke is part of the design. Now we can double click this, click stroke, leave it at black this time, and click OK, and we can get the black on there the way we wanted. Now we can repeat this process into infinity. Hold Control, click new layer, activate the top layer, hit Control E to merge it down, double click, select stroke, and this time choose red, click OK, and click OK. Now that looks just fine. That's exactly how we want it to look. And as long as you or your client never change your mind or never make a mistake, then it's not a problem. But what if after you've completed the design, your client comes in and says, hey, that looks really nice, but I wish you had used a different font. And here's the rub. If you use this technique to apply multiple strokes, you are now stuck starting this layer over from scratch because we destroyed the editability of the text by collapsing this layer in on itself over and over and over. But there is a better solution, and as you probably already guessed, that solution comes in the form of smart objects. So let's hold down Control and Alt and Z 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times to get us back to our original text layer. Now the way we start off here is exactly the same as we did before. We want to apply a white stroke, so go ahead and double click, choose stroke, change the color to white, click OK, and click OK. Now this is the point to where things begin to change. Instead of collapsing and flattening this layer, we want to right click and convert it to a smart object. Now as you may remember from the earlier tutorial, Photoshop creates a second document to store this smart object in. Now this document is not affected by anything that we do here. Now that means that we can make changes to this layer without worrying about destroying our original document because it is now safely protected inside the smart object. So let's just go ahead and do that now. Double click this layer, click stroke, leave it at black, and click OK. Now this is looking good so far, but we still have that red stroke we need to get on there. So how are we going to do that? You guessed it, we can convert this into a smart object now. And we can double click, and we can hit stroke, and we can choose red, click OK, and click OK. So now what we've got is a smart object that's referencing a smart object that's referencing a smart object. Pretty cool stuff. So now what happens when your client comes in and says, hey, that looks great, but what if we used a different font? You can look back at him and say, no problem, give me 30 seconds. Now if you remember, the way we edit a smart object is to drill down inside the smart object document. And we do that by double clicking on this icon. And this opens up the second level of our smart object. but our text layer is contained within the first level. So let's go ahead and double click this icon, and that opens up the text document. So now we can simply pick up our text tool, highlight all the letters, choose a different font, any font is fine, and click OK. Now we need to resize this so that it fits inside our palette, because if we don't, it'll be clipped off when we go back to the top level. So grab your move tool, zoom out so you can see all the transforms, and then grab a corner transform, and while holding Shift and Alt, drag towards the center. Release it and click the check to commit the changes. Now we can close this document, click yes when prompted to save, close this document, click yes when prompted to save. And when we get back to the top level, you'll notice that our font has been updated. Now let's suppose your client wants you to change the black stroke to yellow. Now that can be done just as easily by drilling back down into our Smart Object document and going to the level that contains the black stroke. Now we can double click here to open up the layer effects, choose stroke, and change this color to yellow. Click OK, click OK. Now close the document and click yes when prompted to save. And when we get back to the top level, there it is, updated just the way we want it. And that's going to do it for this tutorial. I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.